Testing, testing. Do, 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 do. Mark, can you hear me?
You hear me? Yeah.
How about from over here? It's good and loud. Yeah.
Testing. 1, 2. Yep.
Hello.
It is 6:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order. But before we start with the Pledge of Allegiance, just one thing. Our minutes are going to be taken from Karen at home via Zoom. So we'll have to make sure that we speak clearly so we know she can take proper minutes via home listening to us here. So we've done a job with the microphones. Hopefully it'll work so everybody in here can hear one another. And those at home, it's a better learning experience. So with that, I'll invite you to stand with say the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Alderman Piesel.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Alderman Piesel. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Eckern. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Next item is to approve the minutes from our January 18th meeting. You've had a chance to review those. Are there any corrections or changes? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve. Moved by Alderman Bierke. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Fargen. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is approval of the bills for the city. You've had an opportunity to review those. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve. Moved by Alderman Unger. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Eckern. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Our next item is visitors to be heard. Visitors to be heard is the opportunity for persons to address the council on items not on the agenda. If the item can be handled administratively without council action, I'll refer it to the city administrator. If the item requires council action, it will be scheduled for an upcoming meeting. Persons wishing to comment on items on the agenda shall request to speak following the presentation of the agenda item or after I open it up for public comment. Also, if you intend, if you're here this evening, we would invite you to sign in, at least so we know who is here at our meeting. And of course, if you want to speak, we will have you do that. We do have one tonight. It wasn't left off intentionally. We are excited to have with us tonight members of the Happy Youngster 4-H group with us. Quite a few of them, and parents are with them. An active group. If you remember, several months ago, they came up with a proposal to redo the door for handicap accessibility, and they've been diligently working to raise funds to meet that goal. So they are here to give us a presentation and see what we can do to help them get across the finish line. So I'll invite you to the mic, introduce yourself, and I don't know if you want to introduce the members that are here with you, but we welcome you and look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. I'm Macy Williams. I'm the vice president of the 4-H Happy Youngsters Club. I'd like to thank our lovely members for coming out here tonight to support me while I talk about a little bit of what's going on. So we got a $1,500 grant from Sioux Valley Energy, as well as a generous $100 donation from Scrooge's Funeral Chapel. So, and we are looking at other grants as well, just in case if, some unexpected problems arise with the addition of the door. Jessica, is there anything else that I should add?
The project costs approximately $3,000. Our club has several candy sucker sales coming up at the Coleman-Egan School District. They have dates coming up on the 3rd and 4th, I believe, and then we will be selling suckers at the Flandreau High School at a basketball game on the 13th, I believe. So we've got a few items where we're planning on raising some funds. I'm hoping that we'll have a couple $100 raised through that. But right now with the estimates that we had from last year, it was approximately $3,000 of the total cost. So we're a little over halfway there, and thank the city for their interest and support and of the project.
Thank you. Do you guys have any questions for us?
Any questions from the council? Any questions from the council? Well, I have a couple comments on this. I have visited with our city administrator, Jeff Peterson, on this, and he has come up with a way and found some additional funds that I believe that grant monies that can be used towards this project. I think that if the 4-H group has diligently worked, applied for grants, got them, are working hard, this is a benefit both to the city and to them to get this door so it's handicap accessible. I encourage them to come, and I encourage them to ask the city council for assistance in reaching their goal, so this project can become to fruition and done. So Jeff, if I could, I'm going to turn it over to you. Maybe you can explain a little bit about some of the things that you found out that you can present to them tonight.
Missouri River Energy Services, our supplemental electricity supplier, has a program called Community Event Sponsorship that makes available a 50% match to the city for events, or in this case actually a project that we would sponsor or support. So when the time comes that the club has reached the point of where they would come to the city with a request, we would be able to obtain half of whatever is requested of us from Missouri River Energy Services for the purpose of this project. So that's pretty good news.
So Jeff, would you, so they could make a request to us and we could, since it's not on the agenda, we'd have our next meeting? Is that how this would work?
Well, I mean, we have to request a exact amount of money from Missouri River, so I guess at such a point in time when we knew what we wanted to request, we would do that. It's not on the agenda tonight, so would you expect that you would be back in a couple weeks, or your fundraiser would conclude within a couple weeks? Yeah. So I would say put it on the agenda next meeting in 2 weeks. By then, they'll know what their fundraising has achieved, and then action can be taken to authorize the expenditure of funds to meet the 50% match that's requested of Missouri River Energy, and then we should be there.
Alderman Unger?
Just at that time, to have an exact number, would you be able to get an actual estimate or quote for the work that you're asking to have done so that we can just go off of that?
We can request another bid, especially because ours, the one that we had initially done, it might be a little bit outdated. Prices could have increased or decreased depending on whatever's going on.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so we can get another bid and then we can present that at some point.
Never have a problem with my mic. What we'll do is in a couple weeks, if you would back to our council, we will make sure that you are on the agenda and that at that time you'll have numbers at the council and, accordingly to help you achieve this this goal. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Happy Youngsters. Keep up the good work. We appreciate all you're doing. Next item is our reports. For my report, just a couple things, and I'm sure that Jeff will also touch on this a little bit, and Brad possibly. We had our first fire station building task force group that met last Tuesday evening. It's our intent to meet at least every other Tuesday here in the near future to work on accomplishing our goals and work with our architects. I thought it was a thoughtful and meaningful discussion between us and the architects as we try to create our wish list of what everybody wants, and then have them put together a proposal to see what we can afford to accomplish those goals. So it'll be exciting to report on this as we continue to move forward. But we met here. It worked well for everybody to be socially distanced and communicate. We may be doing some of ours via Zoom, but that is, I think our next meeting probably will be that way. So we'll be kind of doing a combination of both in-person and Zoom type meetings. And hopefully we'll be able to come back with the council to kind of show you where we're at and what kind of dollars we're talking about, and how we're going to achieve that moving forward. I know Jeff's been working on numbers and crunching and alternatives for the council to take a look at. Also today was our monthly meeting with the Flandreau Development Corporation, tribal government, and city government. We're meeting the first Monday of the month at 9:30 at the Flandreau Bistro. It's just a good opportunity for us to exchange ideas of what's going on. The tribe has a lot of different projects, but today really focused on, I think maybe Jeff put it best, is branding our community name-wise. How can we incorporate tribal and city entity and our community together and reflect a brand of advertising or signage or something together, and what that's going to look like. There was members of the tribal council and I'm going to mess Dusty's last name. I always get it mixed up. Is it Dusty Bordeaux? Boulier? Yeah, so I'm sorry, Dusty, if you're listening. I always mispronounce your last name, but I know he is Dusty. He does a lot with the cultural and language and education pieces for the tribe, a wealth of knowledge. And then the casino person that does their marketing and stuff was there. And so it was good. And then we had the governor's office, and I think I might have kept his business card because I thought it was kind of he did this cool little state thing. But we had Kelvin Blumendahl, and he's with the Industry Research and Development Representative. He's in Sioux Falls, but he's with the Department of Tourism. And anyway, it is exciting that he came up to kind of share some ideas and things with us. So hopefully out of that, we can come together in working with the tribe and us and other interested individuals to come up with something, whether it be murals throughout the community or signage or whatever, just trying to find a way to link our heritage and our community together in a more formal fashion. So that's kind of an exciting venture going forward. Also, the tribe is diligently working in Pierre as they work through this cannabis issue out there. They have representatives out there throughout the week and lobbyists that are out trying to educate legislators and those types of things about how this would look. The tribe is, kind of planning forward and doing a lot of innovative things as they prepare themselves for what hopefully will be a profitable venture for them to move forward in that industry. So a lot of exciting things. Their Warrior Bingo, we saw a little bit of a commercial on that's going to be kicking off. That's going to be kind of online type gaming, which will kind of allow them to stretch their boundaries beyond the walls here in Flanders. So that's been a long time in the works. The Development Corporation, I don't need to speak for Kelly, but she's here if she wants to add anything. But they are, working on Southview Heights. Also, they've made a purchase of a piece of property in town for development type purposes. So they got a lot going on their plate too. So it's good to see all three groups get together and share the exciting things that they're working on, and hopefully many of those objectives we can work on together for our community. Other than that, on the purchase agreement of the lot where the fire station is going to go, hopefully that'll be surveyed this week, so we'll know exactly where the lines are, and then we'll be able to clear up that piece of ground in the middle that has undivided interest between us and another entity to kind of separate that out so it's more clean. But we can't do that till the survey's done, and hopefully that'll be done this week. And then I did share the title work with Jeff today, and he's going to be working on some of the items that need to be checked off on that in order to get that purchase clean and ready to go. Other than that, that's everything I have at this point, and I will turn it over to our City Administrator, Jeff Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor Sutton. I want to talk about the dam project just a little bit. I think we're looking at the first meeting in March for a presentation on the 30% design workup. Talked a little bit about this last meeting. I'd like you to think about having that meeting in the council chambers and use Granicus, much as we did in our first meeting with BAR. I guess we'll watch what COVID does between now and then. I don't think it's going to go away completely. So we may want to do that in a similar fashion as last time, where we had that portion of the meeting down there and then came here for the public part of it. Because this presentation is going to be so important, I think we want to use the best technology we have available to disseminate it that night, along with after that night, of course. And that is clearly the Granicus system that we have invested in down at the council chambers, and the big screen television where everybody can see the same visual and be on the same page throughout. So a little bit more about that project. I've started looking into potential funding opportunities for that, and including the state water plan. I was not particularly encouraged by what I learned about that from the state, because once again, water and sewer projects are just basically taking over a lot of the natural resource funding opportunities with the state, and we all know why, because these systems are aging and in need of replacing. And I was told, and I quote, that a Lowhead Dam mitigation project would be very, very low priority. So we need to continue to work with our partners as we are to keep them involved with the prospect that they might be involved at the construction stage as well. But having said that, we are going to have to be pretty self-reliant for that project, I think, where the funding is concerned. So harken back to the presentation I made a few meetings ago on potential funding sources for that project, and we'll continue to work on that. Recall last year, a little over a year ago, we started doing some work to plan for the expansion of the cemetery, because there's very little left to sell out there. So we hired Banner and Associates out of Brookings to put a new layout together, if you will, for the entire amount of acreage that we own west of the current site. I think everybody's fairly familiar with how that lays out. We took a pause to consider what we may want to do to maybe add some value to the planning process in terms of master planning, for lack of a better word. I don't want to negate that notion or that potential effort, but we do need to begin to open some of that area up. So to that end, we have met again with with Banner and Associates and have made plans to begin to open some area just west of the tree line, if you know where that is, on the northwest portion now, which is the most logical expansion direction because of its proximity to existing roadways and so on and so forth. So we're having the layout for the new area revised to show an opening of a new section there, which would have about 1,000 burial plots available to sale. As far as the infrastructure part of that, all that we would do to make those available is to put in a north-south road and then extend the east-west road from the current cemetery to that point, and then extend the water line into that area, such as what exists in the other portions of the cemetery. All of which we would plan to do with our own labor and equipment to keep it as low cost as possible. So again, not to negate any potential effort to plan out that whole area, we need to move ahead and open some of it up. So I think it was a fairly easy conclusion of where that needed to be and how it could be done in the most economical fashion possible. So that'll be a spring project for the street and parks department, is to put that infrastructure in, and we can start making some of that area available. And that's all I have.
Are there any questions for Jeff or myself? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the administrative reports. Motion by Alderman Fargen. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Unger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is a presentation from the Parley Group, Kyle Haug, on the Japanese gardens. So I will invite Kyle to come up and share his thoughts and his proposal with the City Council.
I believe you all have a copy of what we feel that the Japanese Gardens needs for work. Can you hear better now?
You turn it the other way. You had it. No, the switch.
I can yell. Is that I have a deep voice. There. Can you hear that? All right. So I'd emailed everybody last week a copy of what the overall scope of what we wanted to do with the Japanese Gardens, and I brought a copy tonight. You know, as I talked before, our intention would be to restore the building, bring it back to what it was like 102 years ago. The city would be able, the residents would be able to continue to use it. We'd use it as a dance hall with different entities renting it at any time. It's one of those things that the place means a lot to my wife and I and our family. We've got a lot of memories there. I think a lot of the people in Flandreau do. You know, it's a beautiful old structure. It's the last standing dance hall in eastern South Dakota. Our intention would be to purchase it from the city and renovate it and keep it going so future generations can enjoy it. We kind of broke it down in the presentation showing the different things that need to be done. There's a few of them that have different options, such as the foundation. Ideally, we'd lift the building up to 3 foot high with floodgates in there, but I don't know if that's a possibility due to the size of the building. They have to dig quite a deep trench underneath it to get the jacks under it to lift it. With the proximity to the river, I'm thinking it's not going to work. So the second option would be is we would basically level it like a trailer house is leveled. You go to one point, you lift it up, rebuild the foundation, move over 10 feet. It's just a slow painstaking process. The building doesn't go any higher than it is now, which is kind of a shame, so it still has flood issues. But, you know, that's the foundation is very bad shape. If you, on the east side of the building, the walls are actually dropping a couple inches in a lot of spots, so it's separating the building. The south end of the building leans quite far down, so that's probably one of the bigger issues that we'd be faced with. The floor is another one. There's a couple options we look at with that. One would be to replace it with new flooring. There's 2 levels of floor in there, the original stuff, and then one that was put in later on. We'd definitely pull the top one out. The bottom one depends on the condition, if it's warped or not from the last flooding. We'd rather leave it if possible. And then either put new flooring in there or purchase flooring from a old building that's been restored and put back in there. I kind of like that option better because the older wood has a better look to it. You won't find as many knots in it. It's got better coloring from patina over the years. So, but it'd be essentially a new restored floor. The rest of it, you know, we put a commercial kitchen in the building, which would allow for more uses for people to have wedding dances, things of that nature. You know, and lots of small things. There's a lot of rotted lumber in the side, so that would be replaced, and warped floors in the seating area. Those would be pulled out and replaced. The restrooms, we'd reattach those to the building and replumb them, put them ADA accessible. You know, we had initially thought possibly using the city's facility outside, but that's not really the best option because then it becomes a maintenance issue for the city, and it's better to keep everything inside the building as much as possible. Part of the plan would be to make the entire building ADA accessible, including the front, because right now it's tough for people to get in and out of it if they have any limitations. Other than that, I mean, it's all kind of laid out in the plan. Does anybody have any questions about what we're thinking or concerns or comments?
Are there any comments from any council members for Kyle? Alderman Peasall.
Kyle, I think your timeline on here of getting it done by summer 2023 is certainly faster than the city would ever be able to get it done, given our current resources. The biggest concerns that I've had expressed to me as I float this past people in the community is nobody wants to part with it permanently. There's a fair amount of flexibility as far as some sort of really long-term lease, but the idea is that the city would eventually come to own it again. Where are you at on that? Is that something that you're open to? I think we had mentioned this the last time around when we discussed it a little bit.
Yeah, we had talked about doing a long-term lease on the property, and we're open to that. You know, we do have a home that's on a 99-year lease on a lake, you know, so it's a doable option to us. You know, 99 years from now, I guess whatever happens with it is none of really our problems at that point. So
Hopefully you will have justified the $400,000 you anticipate putting into it within 100 years?
I, I would hope so, but you
Me
know,
too.
I doubt it. But you know, like the investment's pretty substantial in the building, but it's really, we're not coming at it from a profit standpoint. It's not a business thing. It's really just for the love of the community, the love of the property. You know, Flandreau's a great community, and that why we want to put the money into it. There's no way to cash flow it, I guess is the best way to put it.
Any other questions from the council? Alderman Bierke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess ultimately the uses of the building that you're looking at for like destination weddings and family reunions and things like this, or when you see a commercial kitchen, are you looking at, you're not looking at restaurant type of thing, are you? Or is that, I just,
Our intention is just to use it as an event.
I see,
So,
yep.
It allows people to have the caterers come in, or if they want to prepare their own food.
Gotcha.
It's just kind of an added bonus to give more value to the property for people. I don't want to run a restaurant at all, so.
I see what you mean as far as picking up the building. That would be a picking up a deck of cards that are standing on end. It could just totally destroy the building. If with that kind of to be said, is there a way to say that the city would be protected and maybe have the opportunity to have that building back at some point if, you know, you said, I'm good, I'm going to leave, or how would we determine that other than just a lease on the ground? Or you get my point, what my question is there?
I think Bob asked a question similar to that last time, or somebody did, and I guess probably the best way would be first right of refusal on sale, you know, so the city would have the right to purchase it for whatever invested in it, you know, or because a long-term lease it's essentially a 99-year lease is essentially an ownership, you know, but it's a property that would go in trust with some other properties for our daughters, you know, so it's not something that probably ever would be sold, you know, it's.
And another thing, with ball games and stuff like that, you're going to have all kinds of parking things depending on occasion, and it'd be something that would probably be able to be worked out in, I don't know if you have to go by contract or just understanding, or, because there will be probably some conflict in that, you know.
And we looked at that, and I talked to Jeff a little bit about the parking issue, and so our thought was, you know, when they had dusted on similar things out there never was too much of a parking. If you got baseball games going, yeah, that's going to cause an issue, but if you go to the west of the, I call them Little League fields, there's that big open lot, so there could always be direction for parking and things over
I mean,
there.
you can park a whole bunch around there, but
Yeah.
there would have to be some understanding and shared with ball teams and whatnot also. So we don't got to get too proprietary or start bickering over the front row, you know, so to speak, I suppose.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
Alderman Unger.
I guess to kind of piggyback off of Brad's last comment, I think that's the toughest part of the proposal is that it's awkward in that it's right in the middle of the city park. I mean, it's a wide open public space that's used almost constantly, you know, in normal weather times of the year. And I mean, right now, if somebody says, hey, we're going to host an event out there, that goes through the city. The city takes into consideration other ball games and everything else, other events throughout the summer, and we can say, okay, here's how the best way to schedule all these different events that might be taking place. With turning over control, ownership essentially with long-term lease, you're giving up that control to afford and ensure the public has you know, the best use of that public park. If there's a large event, you know, I don't know. I mean, in theory, you know, I hope it's every weekend, right? I mean, you got weddings coming or whatever it's going on out there, and you got all these things going on. But then that cuts into the public's use of, you know, prime public space. I think that's probably the most awkward issue that I can think of. Um, I think, you know, on its face, the proposal is a gift to the community, you know, and it's hard to balance those things when you're trying to protect and promote the public interest to use a space, and at the same time, you're doing something that essentially the city would have a tough time doing on its own. So I don't have a specific thought or feeling about this one way or the other than it's a good problem to be confronted with, you know. But I have gotten a lot of comments just generally. The city wouldn't give up a public space like this, would they? I don't know. I mean, I think we have to consider what the proposal is, and I think you've given us something to think about. Certainly, I don't think I'm in a position to act on this, and so I don't know if we are expecting any action tonight, but beyond that, I hope this information, I assume we can share this proposal, you know, at will with anybody that calls and asks now, but that's kind of the position I've got going into it, is that there's just a little bit of competing interest going in.
Alderman Birkey.
Just one brief thing. I'm not against what you're saying. I'm just looking at a couple of maybe pitfalls, and I think it's something we should be able to work through or come with a solution, and would make that kind of work.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Kyle today, and just asking me what my thoughts were, and I shared, and I didn't expect the council to make an action this evening. This is this is kind of trend setting. This is something that really needs to be thoughtful and meaningful, and we need to take our time to make sure that we're making the right decision, whatever the decision would be, to do it or not. Some of my concerns centered about some of the liability and those types of things, and how that works when you're in the door and you step 1 foot out the door. And, you know, I mean, the city's always going to be pulled into activities and things out there, because who they're going to sue, they're going to sue the big pockets, they're going to sue the city. So there's just some of those types of things that, and I don't know, and I mentioned this to Kyle, I'm not sure that I'm aware of, or that I can't find another situation where public interest in a building is leased out in a city park, and what that arrangement is. I just haven't been able to find that out there to look at, to see how it works. So we might be something completely new and different that nobody's tried to do before. And I just think we need to get some contractual terms and stuff like that worked out. I mean, like Alderman Unger said, you know, it's a nice problem to be presented with when we have an individual that wants to invest in the community and make a facility we have better. But with that also comes to make sure that we also protect the public's interests. So, and I think there's a way that we can continue this conversation, and maybe we can come up with a solution that will work for both Kyle and his family and the city to make this work, and maybe we won't. But it's a nice discussion, a nice problem to have. You have a comment, Lisa? Kyle, do you want to put them? So,
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So a project like this, there's not a lot of large, heavy equipment. The only time it probably would bring that in would be if the building was to be fully lifted. You know, we had kind of thought about fencing off the area. You know, we've done that in some properties downtown Sioux Falls that we've done. We've just barricaded everything. As people get nosy, kids get in there, and adults and everyone, you know, so a fence doesn't stop people, but it stops most people, you know, and so that's kind of our thought is, you know, if if they're lifting the foundation in one corner of the building, that area is blocked off, you know, and not a huge area that impedes everybody in the park, but yeah. Right. Well, and like I said, it'd be minimal fencing, minimal areas. We wouldn't come in and put a large fence blocking off the entire structure. You know, we have to consider everything as we do it. You know, part of it is it's kind of shoehorned in there. There's not a lot of room to go 60 feet out all the way around the building. Ideally, yeah, you do that, and nobody messes with anything. The equipment sits inside it, and it's good. But it's not possible there. The external stuff isn't. That won't take near as long as the internal. You know, I mean, gutting out the building and redoing the floors and the electrical and redoing the bathrooms. That's what's going to take the majority of the time, the work time. You know, so the contractors, you know, the tournaments and things are usually on the weekends. You know, so the roofers wouldn't probably be, or evenings. The roofers aren't going to be there. You know, they have an understanding that they have to put their equipment away and not leave it out there for access. Yep. You know, we hadn't given that a lot of thought. Part of the issue with the property is it's a very seasonal property, so there's not a huge window of time to work on it. And so I honestly, I hadn't thought of that. So, yeah, but that's a tough thing. I mean, if there's a tournament going on, the construction people aren't going to want to be out there working on it. They can go work on a different property we have in town. I don't think that would be so much of an issue because nobody wants to be in anyone else's way, you know. So, right. Mm-hmm. Right. That's a good idea. Yep. Yep. That's a good idea. No jackhammers before 9. Gotcha.
Alderman Unger.
I was just trying to think about other examples where this might have happened, and I don't know if if you know one way or the other, but I wonder about Overlook Cafe in Falls Park in Sioux Falls. I have to imagine that's privately owned. But
I thought it was city owned and they just leased the restaurant area, but it was a city facility. But I'm not positive, but I thought that was that arrangement.
could be, but just a thought. Might be something to at least have a starting point to look at what an agreement might look like.
Dan is right. It is city owned and leased.
So the city does the maintenance of the building and all that. All the person inside just leases the equipment and the space, right? Yes.
Yep, the city's a landlord. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Alderman Eckern, do you want to turn on your mic, please? Thank you.
Okay. The number of people out there, when they had the Flandreau Creamery picnic out there every year, that place was absolutely packed. That picture over there on the wall, it shows dishing up ice cream, but the little falsified because there was wall-to-wall people all the time out there. I mean, it was people used to drive cars out there and park them 2 days ahead just so they had a place to park and then they catch a ride out. I mean, it was a lot of people there. It was a big deal.
Well, I would certainly hope our events would do that, but I don't, I don't know that they would. Yeah, that's what we're doing. Like I was telling Dan today, so it's all the way out on the east side of town. The more people we can bring in, where do they come through? They come through the heart of the town. So people really get exposed to Flandreau, see what Flandreau has, and they have downtown at the businesses. And so, I mean, if we can have events that draw a ton of people, so much the better. I don't foresee events such as that. I mean, but you never know.
The other thing, what have you thought about the security of any of your events out there?
Yeah, we would. Anybody who leased the place for a wedding dance or anything of that nature, security's on them. So just the way the city does it. If we have dances out there, then we'd have private security.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess I'm with Mr. Unger. We need to do some more research on this, I think.
Okay. Well, I think what we'll do is, if it's okay with you, Kyle, we will continue to have this discussion and see what arrangement or what legality questions need to be answered moving forward. And we can visit with our city attorney a little bit, and maybe there's an arrangement out there that we just haven't found that would kind of tie into similar to what we're considering doing here. So,
Okay.
But I do thank you for your time in putting this proposal together and your interest in investing in Flanders. So thank you.
Absolutely. One last thing. I did, after I talked to you this morning, I spoke with an attorney we work with in Brookings about the liability part of it. And he kind of likened it to the bar downtown. He said, well, if somebody walks out of the bar and goes in the street, gets in a fight, it's not the city liability that they're standing on city, or if they go in the alley and do the same thing. So it kind of, he said the liability would be just like any other business, you know. So since we're the entity, if it happens in the entity, it's our problem. If it happens outside, you can't sue the city because somebody beats you up in the street, you know. And so, or somebody falls in the street because they're intoxicated. So his take on it, he said there's probably no real liability to the city any more than there would be at any other business, and he just tied it back to the bar downtown. So
Thank you.
thanks for your time.
One other thing, I mean, Jeff is going to, I talked to him a little bit today, and you know, FEMA is, him and Randy and crew worked hard to apply for that FEMA grant to get that floor replaced and things like that, and there are some time constraints to that. So my advice to Jeff is that, you know, let's pursue getting that floor replaced so that we expend those dollars that they worked hard to get. And that is advantageous to the city and to Kyle if, in fruition, we get to the point of transferring any ownership. So,
Sounds good.
all right, thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is new business. And the first item under new business is to transfer from electrical fund to the general fund. This is an annual transfer that the city council has made for as long as I can remember, and before my time on the city council, I believe. And I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Yeah. An interfund transfer, in addition to the budgetary appropriation, requires council motion to make that. So it's the beginning of the fiscal year. This would authorize 4 quarterly transfers of 25% of the budgeted amount per quarter. I would say that we always take a look at this at the end of the year to determine if, in fact, especially the last quarter, is necessary, depending on how the general fund does. It's good that the electric department has the ability to support the general fund, but at the same time, we want to manage that as best we can. So what I'm really saying is we do scrutinize this, at least probably the third and fourth transfers.
Okay, are there any questions? And it's $125,000, I believe,
For the year.
for the year. So it's 31,000 some odd change for the payment. So, any questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
We'd be authorizing the the full, not just one. Be the
Right.
full. I'd make that motion.
Motion by Alderman Bierke. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Unger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Next item on our agenda is to review the COVID-19 measures for the community center here. And I'll turn it over to Jeff. He has a recommendation for the council to consider.
Well, the reason this is on the agenda is because the current restrictions that are in place were passed back on November 16th, and part of the motion was to review after 60 days. I think particularly the restrictions that are placed on this facility itself, but there were 3 actions taken then. One was, I believe, to require masks for people entering city offices. Secondly, to continue to use Zoom for the months of December and January. And thirdly was the restriction on this room, the community center, of 50 persons or fewer, with the disallowance on use of the kitchen. So again, it's the allotted amount of time has passed, and a little bit more actually, so it's appropriate to review these restrictions tonight. From my perspective, not a lot has changed, at least from what we're hearing on the science part of it in terms of the transmission of COVID and the safety measures that are being recommended by the CDC and others. So my recommendation is to extend these same restrictions for another 60 days.
Yes. If you would come to the mic and just introduce yourself, that would be great.
I'm Wiley Scalise. I'm the new ag teacher, FFA advisor here. Part of the reason why I came tonight is I knew this was going to be on the agenda, and we used this facility in March for our FFA event. And I wanted to kind of talk to you guys on that with 2 things coming up, one in February actually, and one in March. Our March CDE, where we normally bring in about 1,000 kids, we have decided with how the state's running it this year to go ahead and cancel our event this year. We felt that was going to be the safest option for our community and our students. And then secondly, our FFA community breakfast that we typically do, that we run out of here as well. We would like to still be able to utilize the kitchen, but what we thought would be the safest way would be to run it as a drive-through. So have the kids working with me, cooking breakfast in here, masked up, as many precautions as we can. But we're running the meals out to people in their vehicles, and that way it's going to limit people coming in the building. And I just wanted to see if we could still do that, or what your thoughts were on that.
There's another breakfast to the Team of Angels is looking at using the facility in March 7th for a drive-through, only wanting to use the kitchen, and then they will deliver things out similar to what that. The Crystal Theater will be after the 60 days to kind of see where we are. We're in April or that first weekend in May. But that's one thing, is the suspension of the kitchen for that activity and now the FFA's activity. My suggestion to the council possibly is to leave the community center restriction of 50 or fewer in place, but possibly consider opening up the kitchen for use for the drive-throughs. But what that would entail, personally myself, and I've discussed this a little bit with Jeff, is that maybe they just don't use our utensils or anything that are in there. You bring in your own stuff and you take your own stuff out. And then we have some sort of a solvent or cleaning there that they would have to do prior to leaving to wipe down countertops or those kind of things. If we thought it was a problem, I guess we could just clean out the drawers. There's nothing there for anybody to use. But I guess I trust the groups that are going to be in there that they would. I mean, I know the Team of Angels and I know the Crystal Theater, and I'm not sure on the FFA, but they bring in their own frying pans. The only thing they use is the griddle in there to cook their French toast or that type of a thing on, and maybe the oven to keep the eggs or the French toast or whatever warm. But those are two events now that are coming in there, so I guess that's would be my recommendation, is to consider maybe opening the kitchen for that, leaving the other restrictions there for right now. But I guess it's up to the council to decide what they would like to do. Alderman Unger?
I think that's reasonable. I think it's a safer plan than trying to have a normal breakfast. I guess the way I kind of envision that happening is you have a 50-person limit like we already have and extend that, and then you have a separate alternate restriction that says if you're going to use the kitchen, then you only and you can't actually facility. So I can't imagine you're going to have more than 50 people on at a time trying to prepare and serve a breakfast. So I don't think you run into the person restriction, but I think you just avoid it by saying be used for on-site eating. And I think that might extend what you need its purpose for. Frankly, I don't know if we've got any ongoing scientific reason to prohibit use of the utensils. I mean, if we know they're going to be cleaned, I'm not sure there's much more risk than that. I have to imagine that we have a requirement that you clean the utensils you use already. So I think if you're going to use the kitchen, that might suffice.
We're talking about prep stuff rather than the silverware, right? You'd be doing the plastic stuff going out with the food, right?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
That kinda makes
What
that
the
easy.
customer or the community would get would be plastic utensils. We wouldn't. We would just be, if we used your utensils, just be using it to cook with. And on that note, one of my students told me they left one of their big roasting pans here last year. I was not employed here last year, so I have no idea. But
It's officially ours.
It's thank you. And most of our utensils in there aren't really great to begin with, so most people bring in their own to flip their French toast and use their own stuff. But I don't know the last time anybody's used any of the glassware or the plates or anything in there. I mean, they're kind of obsolete. Most everybody is who wants to clean all of that stuff, so they're using everything disposal at this time. But Alderman Bierke?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you remember 10 months ago, we were encouraging carry-out. This is carry-out, and we're a lot different place than we were then. Don't see a problem with that. And that's the way I think the fire department is going to do their thing the same way. It's going to be a drive-by in a proper sense. Right. Yeah. And but as far as the restrictions of 50, when the room is this size, I can't tell you the square feet. You can socially distance 50 people in a third of this. I think you could up that number, and I think you should up that number to 75 if they're using the entire room here at a minimum of 75.
And I guess
we're looking at masks and social distance as the proper channels. I think that's now would be a good time to discuss that a little bit.
Yep.
I'd like to see that move forward.
And I just, if you could you just hold that discussion as a separate piece to this and have us decide in the kitchen thing first, because there's another event coming that we got to have that discussion on also. So.
Yep, I'm cool.
Any other comments from any other council members, or is anybody willing to make a motion to at least deal with the kitchen use at this time? Alderman Unger?
I would make a motion to open use of the kitchen by normal channels of reservation to the public for the limited use of carry out fundraisers, as it were.
Okay. Is there a second? Second
s-
by Alderman Peasall. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Does the city know what date that you're doing? Have you reserved the date?
Yes, I called and asked them about it, but I gave the wrong date. So I'll have to call back tomorrow and make sure I get the right date. I'd lose my head if it wasn't attached.
Okay.
Um,
Yours is usually during the weekday, a weekday, right?
It's going to be a Thursday
Okay,
morning.
all right.
So, yes.
Okay. Then
Yep.
it won't conflict with the other ones that I'm aware of at this time. So.
Yeah. And that will be on February 25th. And then February 24th, we're going to have the Blood Mobile out front again
Okay.
to do that. And just thank you guys for working with the Ag Ed program and FFA and being willing to have us. And if you guys ever need any help with anything, you give us a call. If you need help making signs or things like that, I just put in a grant today to get a new plasma cutter table. So hopefully that'll come through. And I'm all about community support and anything I can do to get the kids out of my hair in the classroom and in the facilities or the parks doing different things. So thank you.
Well, we thank you. Nice meeting you. Welcome to our community, and we look forward to the opportunity to continue to work with you. So thank you so much. Now the other discussion on, the recommendation is to, for the next 60 days, leave it at 50, and we can discuss that. But there is a reservation in June for the Stanger Maley wedding in June. But as you know, with anybody with weddings, invites and stuff have to go out probably relatively soon. 60 days from now pushes us to, April. And I'm not sure how soon they send those invites out or reservations out, but they need to be, and they've reserved the facility, so they have the date. But now they've approached me and questioned, can we count on being able to use the facility in June, barring the president or the governor shutting down the state or those types of things. Is that a possibility? So I guess that's why, Brad, I wanted to wait to have this discussion to see, and maybe they can wait till April or our last meeting in March to make that, to be able to do their invites. And no, I just know they're a little bit concerned because they want to be married here, and they're limited on facilities to accommodate a wedding. So,
Yeah, I know we've moved our safety meetings away from here for this March at this time, I believe. So we're not going to be using it, but we could with that number in the space that we have. So that's
for
why
50 or for 75?
it'd be 75 to 100 would be what we would be using it as. But when you have this kind of square footage, you should be able to mask and distance and do things properly in a building this size. We're coming into the vaccination stage of things, and however that rolls out, and looking into the future a little bit. At some point, we have to step out of the basement. My opinion. I'd like to see us increase from 50 at this point in time. Not open it totally up, but increase the number.
Okay.
Are there any other comments or suggestions on that? It's been thrown out there to increase the number to 75 or 100. The recommendation is to leave it at 50 for the next 60 days. And it doesn't by any means answer the question on the wedding in June. But I guess, Alderman Unger?
I mean, the easier one to address is the request about the wedding. I mean, the short answer is no, we can't guarantee anything. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. The last 3 weddings that I've been invited to that have been, anticipated with, traditional glory and pomp and circumstances, they've gone from, a couple hundred invitees to having, 15 people because they've had a wedding party that's all, contracted COVID, and how do you invite people into that environment? And so I don't know how to respond to a question about can we count on the space. Well, I mean, I don't know how to answer that. If I'm advising them, I would recommend that you have some backup options. I don't know how else to respond to that. Going from 50 to 75, I think we said this the last time we set the restrictions. I don't know what the magic number is. The point is that we should not be encouraging, as a public body, mass gatherings. I think that's the whole point of it. And so by putting a restriction on our public facilities and saying this is not a place for you to come, host your mass gathering, I think that's the point. And so if 75 is the responsible number of people to be in this facility, so be it. But beyond that, the question is public safety. And so certainly it is promising news that we have vaccinations rolling out. That is great. I don't know how effective they are. I don't know how widespread they've been, distributed. And so for the time being, I think our job as a public entity promoting public health is to prevent further spread of essentially still an uncontrolled pandemic that last I saw killed approximately 100, 200 more South Dakotans in the last week or so. So if 75 is a reasonable number, I'm not going to say that that's not. I know this is a large space, but the intent of these restrictions are to promote public health and prevent mass gatherings. So that's where I'm at.
Jeff?
Well, I just want to mention that the 60 days was recognizing of the expectation that the vaccination is going to progress quite a bit over that period of time, and that at the end of that period or just before, things we hope would have changed quite a bit in terms of the number of vaccinations. The other issue I want to harken back to the earlier discussion about this, I think there's a difference if you've got 75 people that are seated apart. But remember, we have a lot of functions in here that are party-type atmospheres, and those folks are not going to social distance.
Alderman Peasall?
So as a bit of a statistics junkie, I can weigh in a little bit on what Alderman Unger was mentioning. As of today, if I remember the statistics right, the state of South Dakota had distributed a little over 70,000 distributed the vaccine to a little over 70,000 people. Some of them have had both, some of them have only had the first dose. At that rate, it's been out for a month now, so at that rate, 60 days from now, we should have somewhere around 200 to 250,000 adults in the state of South Dakota that have received the vaccine, a little over 100,000 that have already received the virus and thus should be also immune to it. So I'm confident that by June we should be in good shape, but he's right, we can't guarantee it. There's no way that we can say, yes, this facility will be available and the pandemic will be under control at that point. I'm inclined to go along with him and suggest that maybe for the time being the 50-person limit is probably the right thing to do. I read in the news this week that the CDC has officially declared that masks are required on all forms of public transportation. I understand the science behind that. I don't think they have the legal authority to do it, but that's to be hashed out in the courts. If there's that much pressure in other parts of the country, I think we should continue to be very careful so that it doesn't find its way back here in big numbers.
Okay, Alderman Bierke?
Why I'm going for that with a number thing like that, I haven't physically been to one, but you walk down the hall the other end of this facility, and I'm sure that for a ball game there's more than 50 people inside that room. And that's why I'm saying we're being overly cautious, restrictive, responsible. I don't know what the answer is, but I think the number can be increased and stay with the quo that we're saying is not to promote, but overly restrict. I think we are with this size of a room. So.
Any other comments? I know that the school came into the Crystal Theater, did every other row for their one act plays here, and I'm sure they had 100 and some people in the theater, and they weren't social distance necessarily in the rows, but they were every other row. They did have taped off in there. You know, the schools maybe just taking a little bit of a different approach on some things, still following CDC guidelines, but they have increased numbers. I mean, you still got tickets, they limit them, but they still have had bigger numbers in some of their areas. But just because what one government entity does doesn't mean that we have to follow, but it does present a discussion and a decision that this council has to make on what they want to do with this facility going forward. So any comments from Alderman Eckern or Alderman Fargen?
Well, I go along with down to the school. They're required to wear masks. You have a wedding dance in here. They're not going to have masks on. So I'm in favor of just keeping it where it is.
Okay. Then I need I would entertain a motion one way or the other on what to do going forward for at least the next 60 days. We've already dealt with the kitchen use going forward, but it's up to the council to decide what they want to do for at least the next 60 days. And I guess, you know, even in the next 60 days, if we come back in 45 days and things change a lot, I suppose we can readdress it whenever. It doesn't have to be at 60 days, but Alderman Bierke?
Let me make this motion then. I'd say we increase the number to 75, but review it in 30 days. And
Okay. Motion's been made by Alderman Bierke to increase the number of people that can be in the community center from 50 to 75 for 30 days, and then review the policy after a 30-day period for people in here. So that's the motion. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Eckern. So the motion is to increase the use in the community center from 50 to 75 days for the next 30 days. Discussion. Alderman Peasall.
Just to clarify, when we say the next 30 days, we mean the first meeting in March. I don't know if that's a Monday or not.
yeah, I'm sorry. At the first, let's go this way. At the first meeting of each month coming, or at least next month.
Is that okay to you, Alderman Eckern, to just go to the next first meeting in March? Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Roll call just to make sure. Alderman Bierke?
Aye.
Aye. Alderman Unger? Nay. Alderman Peasall? Aye. Alderman Fargen? Nay. Alderman Eckern? Aye. The vote is 3-2. Motion passes for the next, so we will review this policy. Looks like the first meeting in March, and the numbers will increase to 75, and the kitchen, of course, will be open and be able to use by organizations or the public going forward, as long as they make reservations with the city office. Alderman Eckern? I think that's something that Jeff will have to work out to see if he wants.
I don't think that's something we probably, I think that's something we just probably would want to make sure we did ourselves, just make sure it's done.
Okay. So we'll leave it up to Jeff to have staff or something handle that, or however he wants to do that going forward with the kitchen. I mean, some organizations are really good at cleaning and sanitizing, and some aren't, but at least this way we'll have a standard and can make sure that it is done for the next organization. Any other comments, council comments? Alderman Bierke, did you have a comment you wanted to make about Karen Gunvalson. She's listening, but she's not with us. But I know you mentioned to me that you wanted to say something. So,
Excuse me. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. In noting Karen's work, and you're going to have to help me out a little bit with this all this stuff, but that she had gave out that report of the money that she'd been applying for through the CARES Act, I believe, and I had talked to the mayor and said, you know, we really need to recognize the extra effort and the results that she and others in the city office altogether have been able to achieve there. That's something that was thrust above and beyond what normal daily business in the city office is, and I think we ought to do a remote and maybe in-person appreciation for all the effort that has been done.
yeah, we're fortunate. I mean, our staff at the city office worked hard and diligently to try to capitalize on getting every dollar that we qualified for claimed and claimed back, and they didn't leave much on the table. Jeff, I don't know if there was 15,000 or something. It was a small number that was left on the table. They actually were able to capture a lot more at the very end to kind of increase our number more than what they had originally projected to us. So, but they did a good job, and definitely appreciate the work to get that money in our coffers. So, yeah, good job. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, I'll adjourn the meeting at 7:44. And thank you all for tuning in. And once again, thanks Tom and Lisa for, I think we're getting this sound thing down and people can hear much, much better. So thank you, council, for keeping your mics where they're supposed to be.